I don't know why tonight feels heavier than the others. The air in my room is still, but it carries something that makes my chest ache. Maybe it's the way the lamp on my desk throws its dim light against the wall, stretching shadows like the way my thoughts stretch toward you. Maybe it's the silence, too full, too complete, reminding me of how you used to fill it without even trying. I keep finding myself returning to the same memory, like a song stuck in my head, one I don't want to stop humming even though it hurts. Your hand in mine, warm, certain, as if in that moment I was the only one you saw. I didn't know then that you were already holding her too, just in another way. You were choosing her, even as your fingers curled around mine, as your thumb brushed over my skin like it belonged there. It's strange how two truths can live side by side, how you could look at me the way you did and still not be mine, how I could feel your presence like sunlight and still stand in the shadow of someone else. I remember the day it first sank in. I was sitting by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass, each drop tracing its own path before disappearing. And I thought of you, how you were doing the same, slipping away from me in ways I couldn't stop, choosing a different direction no matter how much I wanted to keep you close. The ache settled into me then, slow and steady, like water filling a cup until it almost spills. Everywhere I went, I carried you. In the quiet of the grocery store aisle, when I saw your favorite coffee brand. In the laughter of strangers that sounded just like yours from across the years. In the sudden catch of my breath when a song played, the one you once hummed absent-mindedly while we waited at a red light. You seeped into the everyday, until even the smallest things were painted in your color. And yet, even knowing you weren't mine, I didn't let go. I told myself it was enough. The pieces you offered, the scraps of closeness I could gather. I convinced myself that having part of you was better than losing you entirely. I wonder now if that was love or just the fear of emptiness. The nights were the hardest. When the city quieted and the world stopped demanding my attention, you were everywhere. Your voice in my head, your touch still lingering in my memory. I would lie there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the ghost of your hand in mine. Sometimes I swore I could hear you breathing beside me, even though I knew you were somewhere else. Maybe with her, maybe dreaming of a life I was never going to be part of. I think about the way you looked at me when you didn't think I was watching. There was something unspoken there, something deep enough to make me believe. I held on to that gaze like proof, like a secret I could keep safe until you were ready. But now I wonder if that look meant the same thing to you, or if it was just the softness of the moment, nothing more. There are places I can't go anymore, streets that carry your laughter in the wind, cafes where the chairs still sit the way we left them. Even the park bench by the lake feels like it remembers us, the way we sat side by side, shoulders brushing, as if the air between us couldn't stand to be empty. I avoid them now, but sometimes I go anyway, just to feel close to something that once felt like home. I never asked you to choose me. I only asked for honesty, though I'm not sure I would have survived it if you had given it. Maybe I wanted the illusion more than the truth. Maybe I thought I could change your mind if I stayed, if I loved you enough to make the choice for you. But you already knew. You already knew who you wanted, even while you held my hand as if I was the one. It's a strange kind of pain, loving someone who sees you but doesn't stay. It's like standing at the shoreline, watching the waves reach for your feet, only to retreat again and again, never willing to pull you in. I told myself I was content with the water touching my toes, but part of me always longed to be swept away. Tonight, the longing feels sharper, maybe because the wind outside carries the scent of autumn, that quiet reminder of endings. The leaves are turning, and soon the trees will stand bare, stripped of what they once held. I wonder if that's what letting go feels like, standing there with nothing, still rooted in the same place. I don't know if I'll ever tell you how much you've stayed with me, how your absence has taken up more space than your presence ever did, how I've replayed moments over and over until they've worn thin, like an old photograph handled too many times. You chose her. You stood there with your hand in mine, and you chose her. And somehow, I kept holding on, even as you let go. I don't know what that says about me. Only that, even now, under this dim light, with the world quiet and my chest aching, I'm still writing to you, still reaching across a distance you no longer feel, still hoping you might remember the way my hand fit into yours, even if you never come back to hold it again. I woke up this morning with the kind of heaviness that lingers before your eyes even open, the kind that settles in your bones and makes you want to stay in bed just to avoid remembering. But memory has a way of finding you, no matter how still you try to stay. It came to me slowly at first. Your laugh, the exact way your voice softens when you're tired, the warmth of your hand that felt so certain, and then all at once, the truth that you were never mine to keep. I made coffee, the way I always do, but the smell felt different. It reminded me of the mornings you would call me before the sun was fully up. Your voice, still wrapped in sleep, telling me about some dream you had that didn't make sense but made you smile. I would listen, not because I cared about the dream, but because it was you speaking, and that was enough. Those mornings felt like something solid, like they could hold me. I didn't know they were already slipping through my fingers. There's a part of me that still wonders if you ever noticed the way I looked at you, not in the obvious moments when we were close, but in the quiet ones, when you were talking about something you loved, and I was watching the way the light caught in your eyes. I wonder if you knew how many times I memorized you without meaning to, as if my heart already knew it would have to keep you in memory instead of reality. Sometimes I catch myself reaching for my phone, wanting to tell you something small, something you might not even care about, like the way the sky looked at sunset, or how I heard a song that reminded me of the way we used to drive with the windows down. But I stop myself, not because I don't want to share, but because I know I'm not the person you turn to anymore. She is, and I can't compete with that. I shouldn't have to. I think about the night you told me you couldn't stay over. You didn't say why, and I didn't ask, but I felt the distance settle between us, like a wall I couldn't see, but knew was there. That was the night I realized I wasn't the only one you were holding. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that what we had was still ours. But love doesn't work like that, does it? It can't share the same space and still feel whole. There's this image I can't shake, a candle burning low in a quiet room. The flame still there, still giving light, but weaker, smaller, as if it knows it's almost at the end. That's how we felt in those last weeks. I was holding on to the glow, afraid of the darkness that would follow, even as I knew the wax was running out. I pass by the cafe we used to go to sometimes, and it's different now. New chairs, different music, a brighter paint on the walls. But in my mind, it's still the same place where you sat across from me, leaning in as if the rest of the world had gone quiet. I remember the way your hands moved when you spoke, the way you laughed like it was a secret only I was meant to hear. I can still hear it now if I close my eyes. I don't think you meant to hurt me. I don't even think you realize how deep you went. You were just living, making choices for yourself, maybe trying to hold too much at once. But I was there, holding you, believing you'd turn toward me fully one day. You never did. And I've had to learn how to live in that space between hope and truth. Some nights, I dream of you. Not in a way that makes sense. Dreams rarely do. But enough that I wake up with your name in my mouth, like a prayer I forgot to finish. I think my heart is still looking for you, even when my mind knows better. You chose her, and maybe that was always going to happen, no matter what I said or did. But I wish you hadn't held my hand so tightly while you made that choice. I wish you had let me go instead of letting me believe I was the one you were walking toward. I wonder if someday, years from now, you'll remember me in the middle of something ordinary, pouring coffee, driving home at dusk, hearing a song you forgot you loved. I wonder if it will stop you for just a moment, make you think of the way I looked at you, the way I stayed, even when I shouldn't have. I hope it does, not because I want you to regret, but because I want to know I was more than just a passing shadow. Tonight, I'll probably lie awake again, staring at the ceiling, tracing the outline of what we were. And in that quiet, I'll feel it again, the warmth of your hand in mine, the weight of the choice you made, and the way my heart still hasn't learned how to unclench. The nights have become their own kind of ritual. I sit in the same corner of my bed, knees pulled close, the soft hum of the world outside my window barely touching me. The lamp on my nightstand casts that familiar amber glow, the one that feels both comforting and lonely at once. It is in this light that I speak to you in my mind, as if the walls could carry my words to wherever you are. You will never hear them, but I send them anyway, because some things are too heavy to keep only inside. I find myself tracing the outline of the last day we spent together before everything shifted for good. We weren't doing anything remarkable, just walking down a street where autumn had begun to scatter its leaves in gold and rust. The wind was gentle, almost shy, and you had that half smile on your face that always felt like a secret meant for me. I remember thinking if I could pause time, this would be the moment I'd choose. But even as we walked, I could feel the space opening between us, invisible but certain, like the slow pulling of a tide. You didn't notice, or maybe you did and just didn't want to say it out loud. There was a way you looked at your phone that day, a softness you didn't have when you looked at me anymore. I told myself not to read into it, but my heart already knew whose name you were hoping to see. And still, I kept walking beside you, matching my steps to yours, pretending the ache in my chest was just the cool air biting at me. I wish I could say I left that day knowing I needed to let go. But instead, I held on tighter, as if my love could close the distance, as if it could compete with whatever she gave you that I couldn't. That's the cruel thing about hope. It keeps you standing in doorways, long after the person you're waiting for has turned away. Sometimes I wonder if you knew how much of myself I gave you without asking for anything back. Not the obvious things, gifts, favors, words, but the quiet parts. The way I memorized the rhythm of your breathing when you fell asleep beside me. The way I adjusted my own laughter to match yours so you'd feel like we belonged in the same moment. The way I swallowed my questions, my doubts, just to keep your smile from fading. These were the pieces of me I handed over without even realizing I wouldn't get them back. The truth is, you could have told me then. You could have said, I'm choosing her. And it would have broken me, but maybe it would have been cleaner. Instead, you kept my hand in yours, and I let myself believe that meant something. Even now, I can still feel that grip. Not just the physical memory of your fingers curled around mine, but the weight of what it symbolized. Security, belonging, a silent promise that turned out to be an illusion. I replay it when I'm alone, the way someone replays the sound of waves long after leaving the shore. It's gone, but it lingers. There's a room in my mind where you still live. It's always evening there, and the window is open just enough to let the air in. You're sitting across from me, talking about something small, what you had for lunch, a dream you half remember, the way the weather is changing. And I'm not really listening to the details. I'm just listening to you. In that room, you're still mine. In that room, you haven't chosen her yet. I go there when the real world feels too sharp. But I always have to leave, and the leaving hurts every time. I've been thinking about how love can feel like a photograph you keep in your pocket. At first, it's clear and vivid. You can see every detail, feel the moment it captured. But over time, the edges wear, the colors fade, and yet you still hold on to it, even when it's just a shadow of what it used to be. You keep it not because it's still whole, but because you can't stand the thought of being without it entirely. That's what I've been doing with you, carrying the worn-out version of us, afraid of the emptiness my hands will feel if I let it go. Sometimes, in the quiet moments just before sleep, I think I hear you. Not in the literal sense, but in that deep, instinctive part of me that still knows the sound of your voice. It's usually something simple. My name, a soft laugh, the start of a sentence you never finish. I turn toward it, even though I know there's nothing there. It's not madness. It's memory, dressed up in the dark, trying to feel like presence. I used to imagine what life would look like if you had chosen me. Little things, mornings with your hand warm against my back, grocery runs where we bickered over which brand of cereal to buy, evenings where we didn't need to talk because being in the same room was enough. These were the dreams that kept me soft toward you, even when reality was hardening around me. But I think what hurts most is knowing you got those moments. With her, the life I imagined with you didn't disappear. It just happened somewhere I wasn't invited. And I have to live with the image of you smiling at someone else, the way you once smiled at me. There's a song I can't listen to anymore. We heard it once in the car, and you tapped the steering wheel in time with the beat, glancing at me like you were letting me in on some private joy. I didn't know then how much that glance would matter, how it would be the kind of thing that stays along after the rest fades. Now, when it comes on somewhere, I leave. I can't sit in the presence of something that feels like it still belongs to us. I wish I could say I'm angry. Anger would be easier. It has edges you can hold. It burns in a way that feels active, alive. But what I feel isn't sharp. It's heavy. It's the slow sinking of something that once floated, the quiet loss of light as the sun dips below the horizon. It's missing you in ways I can't even name. You chose her while holding my hand. I wonder if you realize what that means. That you left me not in absence, but in touch. That you let me believe I was part of your story while you were already writing the ending. And yet, here I am, still writing to you, still filling pages you will never read, still trying to give shape to a love that no longer has a place to rest. Maybe it's foolish. Maybe it's the only way I know how to keep breathing through the ache. Tonight, I will probably dream of you again, and in that dream, I will reach for your hand, and in that dream, you will take it. And I will pretend, for as long as I can, that you're not already holding hers. The rain has been falling all evening, soft, steady, almost gentle, as if it's afraid to disturb the night. I've been sitting by the window, watching the drops chase each other down the glass, blurring the street lights into little halos of gold. Something about the rain makes memories slip through more easily, as if the sound opens a door in my mind I didn't know was there. Tonight, that door leads to you. I remember the first time you reached for my hand. We were walking, not in a hurry, the air carrying the faint scent of something sweet from a bakery nearby. Your fingers brushed against mine once, twice, and then you held on. There was nothing grand about it, no declaration, no sudden confession, but my heart caught on the moment like it had found something it had been waiting for. I didn't know then that the same hand would one day let go without warning. There's a certain cruelty in the way memory works. It doesn't give me the choice to keep only the good parts. It delivers everything, the laughter and the silences, the warmth of your palm, and the coolness of the space you left behind. Even now, when I think of your touch, I feel both the comfort and the absence at once, tangled together like they can't exist without each other. I find myself retracing the places we once stood, as if walking those streets might somehow align the world enough for you to appear again. The corner where you waited for me that winter afternoon, your breath visible in the cold, your eyes lighting up when you saw me. The cafe table in the far corner where we sat for hours without noticing the time. The park bench where you told me a story from your childhood, your voice soft in the fading light. These places hold pieces of you, and when I'm there, I feel like I can borrow them for a while. But there's another kind of place too, the ones I avoid. The intersection where you once crossed the street to meet her instead of me. The shop where I saw you together by accident, my feet freezing in place as if the ground itself refused to move. The spot in my own kitchen where I leaned against the counter after you left one night, knowing without needing to be told that you weren't coming back. I carry these places in my body like bruises that never fully fade. I wonder sometimes what she gave you that I couldn't. Maybe it was nothing tangible, just a pull you couldn't resist. Maybe she reminded you of a version of yourself you wanted to return to. Or maybe it was simply timing, the way certain people arrive when you're most ready to let them in, and others, like me, come when your heart is already elsewhere. It's a strange thing to love someone who is choosing someone else in real time. You become a keeper of fragments, a laugh shared in passing, a lingering glance, a hand held too long. You learn to live in the in-between, in the almost, in the what if, and you tell yourself that maybe, just maybe, it's enough. But it never is. The night you told me you couldn't see me for a while, you didn't give a reason. I nodded, pretending to understand, but my chest tightened in a way that made breathing feel like work. When the door closed behind you, I sat in the dark for hours, tracing the sound of your footsteps fading until I couldn't hear them anymore. That was when I realized the silence wasn't empty. It was full of all the things we weren't saying, full of all the choices you'd already made. I still dream about that night sometimes. In the dream, I call out to you before you reach the door. You stop, turn, and walk back to me. You take my hand in both of yours and tell me it's me. It's always been me. And in the dream, I believe you. I let the warmth flood in, even though somewhere deep down, I know I'll wake up to a different truth. Loving you has taught me how quiet heartbreak can be. It's not always loud or shattering. Sometimes it's a slow dimming, like lights being turned off one by one, until you're standing in the dark, trying to remember where the switch used to be. You don't realize you've been left until you reach for the familiar and find it's no longer there. I think about the way I learned your rhythms, when you liked to talk and when you needed silence, the way your mood shifted in the late afternoon, the small signs that meant you were carrying something you didn't want to share. I wonder if she knows those things now, if she's learned the patterns I once memorized. And if she has, does that make what I held any less real? Sometimes I want to ask you if you ever think of me, not in the way I think of you, daily in flashes, woven into the smallest parts of my life, but in those unexpected moments when memory surprises you. When you smell something familiar or hear a song you didn't know was still stored somewhere inside you. Do I ever pass through your mind the way you pass through mine? Tonight, the rain is still falling. It's the kind that soaks the earth slowly, the kind you don't notice building until the ground is saturated. That's what this love has been, drop after drop, moment after moment, until it's filled every quiet corner of me. And now, even in your absence, I'm still standing in it. You chose her while holding my hand. I've turned those words over so many times, they've worn smooth, like a stone I can't stop carrying in my pocket. Sometimes I hate the weight of it. Other times I hold it tightly, afraid of what my hand will feel if it's empty. I don't know how many more nights I will sit here, writing to someone who will never read these words. But I do know this. Some loves don't fade just because they aren't returned. Some loves live on in the way you pour your coffee, the way you pause at a certain corner, the way you hear a name and feel something shift in your chest. You have become that for me, and I don't know if I want to let it go just yet. Outside, the rain begins to ease. The streetlights glow against the wet pavement, and for a moment, I imagine you walking toward me, your hands empty, your eyes searching. I imagine you stopping in front of me, close enough for me to feel your breath. I imagine you choosing me, and for a heartbeat it feels real. But then the image dissolves, and I am left with the quiet, the window, and the sound of rain dripping from the eaves. And somewhere, you are holding her hand instead of mine. There's a certain hour of the night when the world feels like it's holding its breath. No cars on the road, No footsteps in the hallway, just a stillness that seems to hum under my skin. That's the hour I'm in now, sitting by the same window I've sat by so many times. The glass cold against my fingertips, the streetlights outside flickering faintly, as if they're tired too. It's in this hour that you always feel closest, not because you're here, but because the silence leaves room for you to fill. I've been thinking about a night long ago, one of those rare evenings when everything seemed to fall into place without us even trying. We had been out with friends, laughter spilling easily between conversations, your hand occasionally brushing mine under the table as if by accident. I remember the walk back, just the two of us, the air crisp enough to see our breath, the sound of leaves crunching under our shoes. You told me about a dream you'd had the night before, and I didn't care about the details, only the way your voice softened when you spoke, as if you were letting me into a part of you no one else saw. When we reached my door, you hesitated. There was a pause, not long enough to be awkward, just long enough for my heart to wonder what might happen next. Then you smiled that small, almost shy smile I loved, and you reached for my hand. You didn't kiss me that night. You didn't have to. In that moment, the warmth of your hand was enough to make me feel chosen. I carried that feeling for weeks, not knowing it would one day sit heavy in my chest for an entirely different reason. It's strange how certain touches can linger long after they're gone. I can still remember the way your fingers curved around mine, the gentle pressure that said without words, "I'm here." And maybe you were for that moment, but somewhere else, in another life you were building, you were already hers. Sometimes I wish I could go back to that night, not to change anything, but just to stand there in the quiet and memorize it more deeply. The way the streetlight cast a pale glow over your hair, the faint scent of your cologne mixing with the cold air, the exact way you looked at me, even if it was never meant to be forever. Maybe then I could hold it without the ache. Maybe then it wouldn't feel like I'm clutching something fragile that keeps cutting me. I've realized that loving you was a constant balancing act between what I knew and what I wanted to believe. I knew in some quiet part of myself that I was never going to be the only one. But I wanted to believe that the way you held my hand meant something unshakable. That belief kept me warm, even as the truth pressed in around the edges. There's a certain cruelty in moments that are almost perfect. They give you something to miss with your whole heart, even when you know they were never entirely yours. I keep replaying ours, over and over, like a film I can't stop watching, even though I already know the ending. And then there are the days that felt so ordinary. They didn't seem worth holding on to at the time, until now. The mornings we sat at my kitchen counter drinking coffee in silence. The way you'd absent-mindedly hum while scrolling through your phone. The afternoons when you'd stretch out on the couch, one arm over your eyes, and I'd watch you breathe without saying a word. Back then, I didn't realize those moments were just as rare, just as fragile. I thought they'd keep coming. It's the small things that haunt me the most now. Not the big arguments or the clear turning points, but the way your voice changed when you answered her calls. The way your gaze drifted past me sometimes, as if you were already somewhere else. The subtle shift in your body when you let go of my hand, a fraction of a second too soon. Those were the cracks that started to show before I was ready to to see them. Even now, there are days when I catch myself wondering what would have happened if I'd spoken up sooner, if I'd asked the questions I kept swallowing, if I'd told you I knew, if I'd refused to settle for half of you. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything. Maybe it would have just ended sooner. But at least I wouldn't have spent so much time convincing myself I could be okay with less. I sometimes picture the two of us meeting in another life, in another version of the story where timing is kinder. Maybe in that life, you don't have to choose between me and her. Maybe in that life, the hand you're holding is mine, and there's no one else standing in the background. I like to think about that life when the ache gets too loud. It's a small comfort, even if it's only pretend. Tonight, I find myself wondering if you've ever stood where I am now, in the quiet hours, thinking about someone you couldn't keep. Have you ever replayed a moment in your head so many times it begins to feel more real than the present? Have you ever reached for someone in a dream, only to wake with your hand empty and your heart racing? I hope, in some way, you have. Not because I want you to hurt, but because I want you to understand. You chose her while holding my hand. The more I sit with those words, the more I realize it wasn't just the choosing that broke me. It was the holding. You could have let go. You could have walked away before my fingers learned the shape of yours. But you didn't. And now, even in the quietest moments, I still feel that shape, as if my hand remembers it better than my mind remembers anything else. The night grows deeper outside my window. Somewhere, a dog barks once and then stops. The rest of the world is sleeping. I close my eyes and try to imagine what it would feel like if you had stayed. Not just physically, but fully. I imagine you sitting beside me now, your presence steady, your attention fixed here instead of somewhere else. I imagine the way my shoulders would drop, the way my chest would loosen. I imagine breathing without the weight of wondering. But when I open my eyes, it's just me and the dim light of the lamp. The space beside me is empty, and the only warmth is from the blanket wrapped around my legs. I know better than to expect anything different. Still, a part of me waits, even in this stillness. A part of me listens for footsteps that will never come. The hour has passed now. The world has started to move again, faint and slow. I sit here, my hands in my lap, feeling the echo of yours in them. And I think maybe that's the cruelest truth of all. Not that you left, but that you once stayed just long enough for me to know what it felt like. I've been avoiding thinking about the last time I saw you, but tonight it comes back uninvited. Not in sharp flashes, but in a slow, deliberate way, like a door creaking open into a room I'd kept sealed. The air in there is thick, still holding the weight of that moment, as if time itself refused to move forward. It wasn't a dramatic goodbye. There were no raised voices, no tears falling onto the floor between us. It was quieter than that, almost deceptively gentle. We were sitting across from each other, the space between us small enough for our knees to touch, but it felt like we were in different rooms. You were looking at me, but not really at me. Your gaze seemed to be fixed on some thought far away, somewhere I couldn't follow. I remember how my hands kept fidgeting with the sleeve of my sweater, twisting the fabric until it stretched. I wanted to ask you what you were thinking. I wanted to ask you if she was on your mind in that moment. if you were already picturing the life you'd have with her. But my throat stayed tight, and the words never found their way out. You reached for my hand then, the way you always did, fingers warm and familiar, and for a second, I almost let myself believe that everything was fine, that maybe you were still mine, but there was something different in your touch, softer, almost apologetic. It felt like you were holding me the way someone holds something fragile, right before setting it down for the last time. The conversation we had that day wasn't about us, at least not on the surface. We talked about your work, the weather, a movie you'd seen recently, but underneath every word was a current I couldn't ignore, pulling us toward an ending neither of us wanted to name. I laughed at something you said, but even as the sound left my lips, I knew it didn't reach my eyes. And you knew it too. When it was time for you to leave, you didn't linger. You didn't find an excuse to stay a little longer the way you used to. You stood up slowly, like you were giving me a chance to stop you if I wanted to. Maybe you hoped I would, but I didn't. I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew I wasn't stopping you from going to her. I was only delaying it. At the door, you looked at me for a long moment. That look should have been the thing I remembered most. But even now, it feels blurry, as if my mind refuses to hold it clearly. Maybe that's because it was the moment I understood, without you saying it, that this was the last time your eyes would look at me that way. You squeezed my hand once before letting go. I felt the release all the way through my chest, and then you were gone. The sound of the door closing was small, almost delicate, but it settled in the room like a final note in a song that would never be played again. I stood there for a long time, my hand still warm from yours, my body unwilling to believe what my heart already knew, that something had ended and it wasn't coming back. For weeks after that, I found myself replaying that day in my mind, searching for something I might have missed, a word I could have said, a truth I could have spoken that might have turned you toward me instead of her. But every time I reached that last moment, the same thing happened. You let go, and I didn't stop you. It's strange how a single moment can divide your life into before and after. Before that day, I still believed we had a chance. After, I learned how to carry an absence that felt heavier than presence ever had. There are days when I wonder if you remember that goodbye at all. If it sits in you the way it sits in me, quiet but unmovable, shaping the way I breathe even now. Maybe for you, it was just another afternoon. Maybe you walked away without feeling the shift in the air. Or maybe you felt it too, and just didn't let it show. I think what hurts the most isn't just that you chose her, it's that you did it while your hand was still wrapped around mine. You could have let go earlier. You could have spared me the illusion that we were still walking in the same direction. But you held on until the very last moment, and now my skin remembers it in a way I can't unlearn. Sometimes I dream about that day, and in the dream, everything is the same until the very end. But instead of letting go, you pull me closer. Instead of walking away, you stay. I wake up from those dreams with a deep ache in my chest, the kind that takes hours to fade. And when it does, it leaves behind the quiet truth that you are not coming back. If I could tell you one thing now, it wouldn't be to stay. It wouldn't even be to choose me. It would be to tell me the truth sooner, to let me grieve the reality instead of clinging to a version of us that only existed in my hope. You once told me that endings don't always have to be sad, that sometimes they're just the natural way things close. But this one sits like a shadow over everything else, even the brightest memories. It's not just sad, it's hollowing. Even now I can feel the ghost of your hand in mine. Not just the warmth, but the exact moment the weight of it lifted. It's strange how absence can feel heavier than presence. And so I keep writing to you in these quiet hours, long after the world has stopped listening, because I don't know how else to carry this. Maybe one day, these words will be enough to set me free. But tonight, I'm still standing in that doorway, your hand slipping from mine, the echo of your choice still ringing in the space you left behind. There's a kind of quiet that settles over a room when you've been in it too long, the air heavy with the things you haven't said. That's what tonight feels like. I've been sitting at my desk for hours, the lamp spilling its soft gold across scattered papers, but I haven't written a single word until now. Every time I try, my mind drifts to you, and my fingers still. It's as if even the act of putting you into sentences feels like admitting something I'm not ready to face. I thought by now the edges of you would start to blur, that your voice would fade into something distant, that the exact curve of your smile would slip from my memory, that the way your hand felt in mine would finally stop lingering in my skin. But none of it has. If anything, you've sharpened with time. The details are still intact. The faint crease between your brows when you were thinking hard. The way your laugh tilted slightly upward at the end. The quiet sigh you made when you were finally at ease. I could paint you from memory and not miss a single line. Some nights I wonder if this is what forever feels like. Not a grand, sweeping romance, but the quiet persistence of someone who stays with you even after they've gone. You chose her, and yet you're still here, in every empty chair, every song on the radio, every walk I take alone. I don't know if that's love or just the residue of it, but it clings all the same. I've stopped trying to tell myself I'm over you. That phrase feels too final, too clean for something so tangled. It's not a wound anymore, not in the way it was at first. It's more like a mark, faint but permanent, the kind you don't notice until the light hits it just right. Then it's all you can see. The seasons have shifted since you left. I've watched the trees strip themselves bare, then dress again in green, then let go once more. I've walked the same streets we used to walk, now lined with faces I don't know. Life has moved forward, and yet I'm still carrying this quiet weight, tucked somewhere no one else can see. I keep thinking about a night we never planned. We were caught in the rain, standing under a flickering streetlight, both of us laughing as the water ran down our faces. You reached for my hand without thinking, and for that brief second, there was no her, no me, no choice to be made, just the simple fact of us, standing in the middle of the world, drenched and unafraid. That moment feels like it belongs to another lifetime now, one where things might have been different. If I could speak to that version of us, I'd tell her to hold your hand a little tighter, not because it would keep you, but because it might help her remember that some things are worth feeling fully, even if they don't last. I think about that a lot, the way love teaches you, not always through staying, but through the ache of losing. You once told me you didn't believe in regrets, that every choice leads you exactly where you're meant to be. I've tried to believe that too, but it's hard when I'm standing in the space your absence left, tracing the outline of something that feels unfinished. Maybe you were meant to be hers all along. Maybe I was meant to learn how to love without holding on. Or maybe some stories just end without explanation, leaving you to write the rest in your head. I still wonder if you ever think of me, not with longing, but with a quiet sort of tenderness. If you ever find yourself driving down a road at night and remember how I used to rest my head against the window, watching the lights blur by. If a certain song ever stops you mid-step, because it carries the echo of my voice, singing softly beside you. If you ever think about the way my hand fit in yours, and how, for a little while, that felt like enough. Tonight, I find myself wishing for something simple. Not your return, not your apology, just the truth. The kind of truth that comes without hesitation, without trying to soften the edges. I want to know if you loved me in your own way, even while you loved her more. I want to know if holding my hand meant anything to you, or if it was just a reflex you didn't think to stop. The clock on my wall ticks softly, the seconds moving forward whether I do or not. Outside, the night is deep and endless, the kind that makes you feel both small and infinite at once. I close my eyes and imagine you somewhere under the same stretch of sky, your life unfolding without me in it. I wonder if you're happy. I hope you are, even if it's not with me. But here's the truth I can't escape. You chose her while holding my hand, and that moment lives inside me like a photograph I can't burn. Maybe one day it will fade. Maybe one day it won't feel so sharp. But tonight, under the quiet hum of the lamp, it's still vivid, still whole, still mine to carry. So I'll keep it. Not because I want to, but because it's the last piece of us I have left. And in some strange way, it feels like letting go of it would mean letting go of the version of me who once believed you might choose differently. And I'm not ready for that. Not yet.